Welcome back. Time for our GMC Sierra Tweet of the Night. Comes from the Penguins. First order of business, a congratulatory phone call from Sidney Crosby. That's what happens when your first two draft picks are literally 2 picks apart in the second round, pretty much drafted together. So you're going to get welcomed into the league by the captain, who's one of the faces of the game and arguably one of the greatest players of all time, over the phone. So that's what happens when you're in that position. But a pretty special day for those two young players coming into the Penguins organization, or at least drafted by the Penguins organization. And while we're on the conversation of hockey, Jason Mackey is here with me. Big trade today. Penguins acquire Kevin Hayes from St. Louis, also a second-round pick in next year's draft for future consideration, so that deal has not been completed yet. But, Jason, it is a situation where, and I thought Seth Rohrabaugh pointed this out very, very well, Penguins now have 4 centers, or I think maybe even 5 centers, that are all older than 32 years old. Noah Chari, Lars Eller, now Kevin Hayes, and then, of course, Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. But in your mind, this move, how does this help the Penguins, and how does this maybe give you some concerns?
Well, the foot speed would be one of Kevin Hayes' recent productivity. I think he had 13 goals in 79 games, if memory serves, last season. I mean, that's the negative of it. You have somebody paying 3.6 and some change to not play for them. I believe that's the Philadelphia Flyers.
Yep.
Kevin Hayes is a big body. If he was a big body and physical, I'd like it a little bit more. I'm not really sure what this move does for the Penguins. I mean, it's a middle six guy. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays a little bit of wing. Is this going to give them depth scoring? I suppose. I guess there's a chance there. But, I mean, the Penguins still have many, many more things to do, in my opinion. And one of the things they need to do is get faster. Kevin Hayes does not solve that.
That's a fair point. 412-575-2600. Give us a call. We got Chuck in Uniontown. Good to talk to the legend. Chuck, you're on the Nightly Sports Call. You there, Chuck? We're going to have to come back to Chuck. In the meantime, we'll try Karen in Mount Washington. Karen, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hi, my question's about Tristan Jarry. Do you guys think that he'll be back as the starting goaltender this year, or or do you think he'll be traded?
It's a great question, Karen, and thank you for the call. Literally had this conversation earlier today with a member of our web team who's also co-host of the Locked On Penguins podcast. We were talking to Pat Damp about this, and we were talking about the situation at goaltender, Jason, where you just re-signed Alex Nedeljkovic for 2 years, $2.5 million per season. You have Tristan Jarry on the hook for $5 million per. So you got 2 goaltenders paying $7.5 million. At the very least, you look at the floor, having maybe a 1A and a 1B guy that you split time with. Maybe the ceiling is Tristan Jarry maybe returns to form, and you have 2 solid guys that can maybe, split time and go further down the line. But you also entertain the thought, could he be moved in a trade, Jason? How does that sit for you?
Josh, before the NHL draft, I would have said that Tristan Jarry isn't going anywhere. And the reason I would have said that is the mandate seemed to be win now or very soon. And to go into a season with Joel Blomqvist and Alex Nedeljkovic as your top 2 goalies, I don't really like that. But hearing Kyle Dubas talk at the NHL draft and sort of kick the can a little bit, I think Dubas may have reframed all of our expectations about how soon the Penguins can be competitive. And if you think like that, it might make sense for them to trade Tristan Jarry if they can find a taker. That's the sort of the X factor that I don't know, because I can't give you an answer on what the rest of the league is thinking. I think if they get an offer that they really like and they can use it to, I forget the exact word Dubas used, but basically extend that window a little further while sacrificing the present, I think they would do it. But I don't think that answer is going to come. So to not dodge Karen's question, I think Tristan Jarry still remains a Penguin, because I don't think the deal out there is going to entice Dubas to do it.
I think that's a fair assessment. And granted, we're still a few days away from July 1st when things really start to kick up. So, like you said, we don't know what they're going to be offered. We don't know what the rest of the league is thinking. But it's something that kind of sticks in your back of your mind for the time being. I think we have Chuck in Uniontown on the line again. Chuck, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Thanks, fellas. Yeah, about the Pirates, it's just terrible that they keep wasting good pitching, great pitching like this. And, as far as the mistake by Oliveris, I've said before, name another team in the league, particularly in our division, the Cardinals and Reds, just for 2 of them. their players are 3 cuts above ours average because their organizations skill better in fundamentals. You know, they can talk about all kinds of ability and talent that the Pirates players have, but if you don't know your ABCs, you're not going to be a good major league player because you're not going to use your instincts properly. And it is just a shame that if the Pirates miss the playoffs by 1 or 2 games, they can look at today's games or that game in Wrigley Field that they lost in the 9th, or the game earlier against Detroit where they lost in the 9th inning. It's stuff like that, and it's inexcusable.
Chuck, appreciate the call. And Jason, he mentioned the Cardinals specifically, and I want to get into this because I've been able to see the Cardinals up close on the Major League side. I've also seen them up close on the minor league side at a couple previous stops. I got to see a lot of Springfield, their Double-A team, and it seemed like every year, and this is a decade ago, it seemed like every year they had a new guy that was coming up that was really, really good. Within a couple years, he found himself in St. Louis. But they just found ball players who knew how to do a lot of great things well, but they always hit the small stuff right, Jason, and it really does come back around to finding the organizations that do the small things right and the ones who don't.
Yeah, and I mean, Edward Olivares is not a Pirates draft pick. He was not developed by the Pirates, so it's a little bit of an apples and oranges comparison, but we can zoom out and look at a lot of stuff the Pirates do or don't do. I mean, on Friday night, you're looking at Edward Olivares throwing behind a runner at first base, allows him to take second base. That's just silly stuff. You can't do that. How many times did the Pirates make the first or last out of an inning at third base? It's a Cardinal baseball sin. I could go on. You know, fly balls that aren't properly handled by an outfielder when there's communication with an infielder and outfielder. Earlier this season, there was communication issues between outfielders. There's just an idea of putting a firm developmental system in place and a standard of expectation on this is how we're going to play. You know, we're talking about the Penguins. It's a good comparison. Frankly, the Penguins, when they were winning Stanley Cups, there was a standard of expectation. And frankly, there still is because of Sidney Crosby. It's not because they're not winning because there's not that. But, you know, you have to have that. The Pirates are searching for it. They haven't developed players consistently or well enough, and we're seeing the results on the field, and, you know, they're creating really frustrated fans.
It really does explains all of that. And plus, I'll add something a little bit further. When you need your best guys to be the ones that exhibit those traits, and those guys aren't always consistent in doing so, that makes it even more frustrating. We got to take another break. We will have another question for Jason before we wrap up here, so we'll do that once more. Stick around. Jason Mackey got a tweet here. I'm going to parse this a bit because there's a lot to this question. But basically he's saying, why is Derek Shelton Teflon? 5 years of bad slides, rundowns between first and home, cell phones in back pockets. He also says his hitting coach might be Matt Canada. But why is Derek Shelton under no pressure? I guess the question for you is, should Derek Shelton be under more pressure, and how much of this falls on him?
How long are you going to let me sit in this chair, Josh?
We got about 3 minutes left in the show.
All right. Now, I don't think I'm going to get to it all. No, look, the Pirates have done some things that they should be commended for. They have competed. I give Derek Shelton a lot of credit for maintaining a culture and keeping things together as they weren't good. The rosters he's had to manage weren't good enough. But right now, and I and others went into this season saying, like, it is the time to win. You need to be over 500. You need to be doing the things necessary to get to that point. And I would say that the Pirates have not done that. So, yes, it's certainly fair to criticize Derek Shelton. Why is he Teflon? Bob Nutting doesn't pay people not to work is probably the best answer I can give you. I don't think that's
one.
And he just finished doing the rare thing of paying people not to work with Neil Huntington and Clint Hurdle. I think Nutting believes in this process. I would also argue it's not all on Derek Shelton. A lot of this is on Ben Cherington to improve the roster. Like, Shelton can still only use the players available to him. He's not the one going out and making trades or not making trades. So that's a roundabout explanation of saying it's not just Derek Shelton, but I understand the criticism. It's fair.
I always remember the old Bill Parcells adage, you know, he's not always buying the groceries. He's the one cooking the meal, but he's not always buying the groceries. And you can make the case that, you know, when you look at, for example, a lineup going into this game, Jason, this lineup had 2 starters in Atlanta against one of the best teams in baseball. They had 2 guys hitting below 200 with OPSs below 500. That's what they trotted out with.
Yeah, I mean, the Michael A. Taylor signing, like, where you can criticize that. Look at their free agency. activity this offseason. They spent somewhere around $33 million, and last I checked, it was a negative WAR that they got. Like, that's not Derek Shelton. You can be as mad as you want about Derek Shelton. That's not his fault. Even some of the reliever choices that he's had to make, like, I don't know. You can get mad at Shelton, but he's also limited in what he's able to do. Now, that being said, he's the manager of the team, and they don't play very sound fundamental baseball. So he should be held accountable for that. He should be criticized for that. It's never one thing. Like, people want to get mad. The offense has been not good at times. At the same time, like, I was looking at this prior to the Atlanta series, if you trace back to May 11th, which is when Skeens got up here, they're 13th in runs in that time. That should be enough to win games. It really should. And there's been poor execution on the part of players. There hasn't been enough done to the team by the front office. So, I mean, everybody has a little bit of blame here, but they've extended Shelton at least through next season, and I don't think Bob Nutting's going to pull the ripcord at this point to get him out of here.
Yeah, it feels like a Spider-Man meme. I guess that's the best way to describe it. There's one guy can point at the next guy, he can point at the other guy, or even maybe from The Office with the three guys with the guns pointing at each other in the standoff. It comes down to the same thing. There's a lot of blame to go around the room, so to speak. We are out of time. Thanks again to Jason Mackey for the time joining us this evening. He's usually here on Saturdays. For Jason Mackey, for our producer Jeremiah Miller, and our team here at KDKA, I'm Josh Taylor saying thanks for watching. Thanks for your calls. Thanks for your tweets. It's you guys that make the show great, and we're here for you 7 nights a week on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. See you later.